Hello y'all, Clifford Campbell here, and today we're doing 3.2 area. Now, guys, if you've noticed, I made this worksheet 3 pages instead of 2. I feel as though this one comes out to be pretty effective with students scoring. So when my students seem to really understand the areas better, they seem to get much higher scores. It's the same for, like, out of all the ones that are important, I feel like it's going to be like the ratio and the proportions and the area. I feel like once my students really start to get those clicking, that scores start going up. So let's get through the area here. So if you already did perimeter, start out with kind of how I did perimeter. I gave you guys a couple dimensions. So like, let's say they say a rectangle has an 8 by 5 area. Well, all you do to get area, remember perimeter, we added them all, right? Area, you do length times width. That's how I like to say it. So this one times that one. So 8 times 5, and the area for this would be 40. And if it has units on it, like inches, sorry, I don't know why it does that. That's just supposed to be 40. If it has something on it like inches, then the way that you would write it is 40 inches squared, or square inches, because it just means that you multiplied the units together, okay? So that's how you find the area of a rectangle. Now, if you got like a triangle or something, the way that that one's going to be is base times height. Same way as this, yeah? Except it's only going to be half of it. Now, if you're wondering, well, how am I going to remember that? Well, think about this. If you got a rectangle, you cut it in half. Look at that. You got a triangle. You got 2 triangles. That's how you do it. It's just the length times width divided by 2. So it's the exact same formula. You just divide it by 2. So they're going to give you that height, I'm sure. So like, let's say it is, the height is 6, and let's say the base of this thing is 10. Then what you would do is you would just do, and it doesn't matter what order you multiply, because multiplying can be done in any order. Like 6 times 10 is the same as 10 times 6. So 6 times 10 divided by 2, and then you just work it out. So that is 60 over 2. Each one is divisible by 2, right? Which makes this 30 over 1, which is just 30, right? And that's how you find the area of rectangles and triangles. It's just length times width, and then triangles length times width divided by 2. Okay, so I'm going to start this off with kind of how I did the perimeter, where maybe they give you one and then they like elongate it and they say like, what is the difference of the areas? Okay, so let's say you have a rectangle that is already, 6 by 8, kind of like what we had up there. And then let's say this is the length and this is the width, okay? And they say the length will be increased by 3 units. And then it'll ask something like maybe, what is the difference between the area of the new versus the small one, or the new versus the old one? Yeah? Okay, so this is our beginning one. That's the old one, right? And then we're going to increase the length by 3 units. And we said the length is this one, right? So I'm going to make this one's still going to be 6. I'm not going to change that one, right? But I'm going to make it longer now, because it's no longer going to be 8. It's going to be 8, 9, 10, 11, right? It's going to be 11 units now. So if you wanted to figure out the difference here, so you would do 8 times 6 here, and then here you would do 11 times 6 to figure out the differences here. So let's just get what those are here. So we got 48 and 66. And if you want to figure out what that is, it's going to be 66 minus 48. And that's going to give us 18. Because remember, what difference means subtraction, right? So that's the difference between the old versus the new. Now, I mean, they could go the other way around too. Maybe they make the length smaller, so instead of it getting bigger, maybe they say, the length will be decreased, by 3. So then that would mean you still got a 6 here, and now it would be, smaller. So 8 minus 3 would be 5. So you'd have something like this, and you can do 6 times 5, which is 30, right? And then it might ask what's the difference there, where you just do the 48 minus the 30, and you'd say the difference between the two is going to be 18. In this case, it would be 18 as well, right? Okay, so just be careful increasing versus decreasing, and comparing an old thing versus a new thing. Okay. Now let's do word problems. So what I've heard is students get confused on a lot of the word problems they might give. So like, let's say they have I'll do a classic one. You're gonna paint this wall. Okay, it's a classic geometry one. You're gonna paint this wall. You got a window here. Okay, and I want to paint everything. I don't want to paint the window, right? But I want to paint the wall. And let's say the wall is 11 feet by 5 feet. I don't know. It's a short wall. Okay, and the window's like let's do like 2 feet by 3 feet. Okay, and you want to paint everything but the window, which I'll say is the shaded part. And let's say paint costs $1.55 per square foot. Okay, so I need to figure out how many square feet I want to paint, and then I'm going to multiply it by my 155, and that'll tell me how much paint I need to buy. Okay, so how would I figure that out? Well, you'd figure out what the larger one is, right? The 11 by 5, and that's 55 square feet, right? And then I would figure out what this window is, which is 3 by 2, which is 6 square feet. And then you want to figure out, okay, well, I don't want to paint the window, so all you do is 55 minus 6, right? And that would give me 49 square feet is what I need to paint, right? So I need to paint a total of 49 square feet, and the paint costs $155 each. So I'm going to do 49 times 155, and that'll tell me how much I'm going to spend on paint. And you need to learn how to multiply those by hand, but my students do say that they get the calculator on a lot of these that would have like decimals in there. So I would assume you'd get a calculator on this one. So 75.95. So that's how much it would cost to paint, just the wall portion of this is $75.95. Okay, and that's if you're like taking something out. Don't forget you can also add something. So like let's say, hey, we're about to hit the World Cup here. I hope this doesn't become an outdated reference. But we're about to hit the World Cup, and what I heard, so we have a football field that's, our traditional football fields are like 120 yards by, I believe, 50 yards. Okay, and apparently the soccer pitch says that they needed to add like an extra 10 yards or something on here. They needed to add that extra 10 yards. And let's say every square yard, so every square yard costs, who knows, like $30, for the turf to add. How much will it cost to extend? Okay, so what you would want to do, the way that I would do is I would say, okay, well, my original football field here, I'll do it in shading, would be 120 times 50, right? Which would come out to, my original football field was 120 times 50, comes out to 6,000 square yards, right? But now my full football field, like I'm gonna add on, because now I have a soccer pitch, I need to add on to it, right? Okay, it's gonna be not 100, it's gonna be 120, right? But times 60 instead. So 120 times 60 is gonna be 7,200 square yards. right? Okay, so we added on, looks like we added on 7,200 minus 6,000. We added on 1,200 square yards, right? Well, at $30 a square yard, it's going to cost us, you're going to do 1,200 times that 30, and you're going to come out to, okay, well, it's going to cost us $36,000 to add those 10 yards for that whole 120 yards, football field. And so you can think about that sort of stuff. I'm sure that it would add up a lot, right? Depending on what it is that you're doing. Okay. I put a bunch of those practice on the worksheets. Now let's try some with some algebra on here. Let's say they give you a rectangle. And they say, oh, one of the sides is 2x, minus 1, and this side is going to be x plus 5. And they say, find the area. Find the area of that. Okay, remember, it's length times width, right? So x plus 5 times 2x minus 1, right? Well, if you're going to multiply those two things, that means we have to do FOIL, right? X times 2x makes 2x squared. X times negative 1 makes negative 1x. 5 times 10 makes plus 10. 5 times 2 makes plus 10x. And then 5 times 1 makes negative 5. And then we combine like terms. So 2x squared plus 9x minus 5. And there we go. That's the area. That's the area of that rectangle. Okay, let's do one with just maybe one variable. Let's say you got like a square. Say we got a square, and let's say they just give you one of those side lengths. Let's say it's a x plus 2. Okay, how would you figure out the area of that one? Well, you'd say, oh, well, this one's also x plus 2, right? So you do x plus 2 times x plus 2. And I want you to know there's two ways to kind of write this, okay? You could do it like we just did. So x times x is x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4. And that would make x squared plus 4x plus 4. Yeah? That's one way to write it. And the other way is you could just simply write it as x plus 2 squared, right? And the reason why I want to put every way you can write something is because this is a multiple choice exam, right? You don't get to choose how it's written out. They write it out for you, so you have to, figure out which one's going to be correct. So that's two very different ways. They look very different ways of writing that same thing. Okay, that would be the area of that. Okay, let's say they just give you like in terms of just x. Let's say you got a rectangle in terms of just x. Let's say it's like 5x. The side lengths are 5x. So it's 5x and 5x, right? Well, if you want to do length times width, that would be 5x times 5x. And what does that come out to? 5 times 5 is 25. X times x is x squared. So that's what the area of this thing would be, 25x squared, right? Okay. Let's see what else we can do here. And remember, don't forget about triangles. If they give you something with a triangle, let's say the height is, 5x and the base is 10x. Remember, you can do the base times the height divided by 2, right? And that would be 10x times 5x is 50x squared divided by 2. That comes out to 25x squared. Okay, that would be the area of the triangle. So it's like that same idea, you just divide it by 2. Okay. Let's do one where they do like the length and the width thing. So let's say a rectangle. Rectangle's length is 3 less than 4 times its width. What is the area? Okay, So remember, you got to be able to figure out what the length is in order to do these, right? So you'd say, oh, well, the length is going to be 3 less than 4 times the width. So we're going to do 4 times the width minus 3. That's how you would get that. And that would tell you what this is, 4w minus 3. That one's also 4w minus 3. And this one is w, right? These are w. So we only need to do length times width. So we're going to do w, length, times the width, 4w minus 3. And there's our area, right? But we can distribute. So I'll make 4w squared minus 3w. There we go. Looks good. Okay. How about if they give you some weird shape? Give you something weird looking. Like, say they go like this. I don't know, and they say like this length right here is 5x, and they say this is, 2x. So then that would make, let's say this one's 2x, so that would make this one 3x, right? Because it'd be 5 minus 2 is 3. And then let's say this one is, let's say the long one is 7x, and so that would be 5x as well, right? Okay, and they say find the area of this thing. Find the area. Okay, first thing you would want to do is split this up into, rectangles, which you know how to find the area of, right? Because we were just doing area. Okay, and then you would find the dimensions of those different rectangles. Like this one is 2x and 2x. So if you did that, 2x times 2x, we just spoke about that, right? That should be 4x squared. Okay, and then this larger rectangle, well, it looks like it would be 5x and 5x. And so if you multiply those, that comes out to 25x squared. It says, what's the area of the whole thing? Well, we need to add them together, right? And since these are like terms, they just add straight together, so 29x squared. And that would be the area of that full thing right there. And I think that pretty much covers area. I hope it all made sense. I hope you have a great day. And now we're on to Pythagorean theorem. See you soon.